The more I think about Syracuse's loss to Tennessee, the more positives I actually take away from it.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are always free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, big picture takeaways following Syracuse's 45-26 loss to Tennessee on Saturday. Later on in the show, I'm going to tell you why I still believe Syracuse football should have bowl expectations for this season. We're also going to talk about Steve Angeli, the offensive line, and special teams. But to start off this podcast, we're going to talk about a big positive here, which is the fact Syracuse once again has a lot of weapons on this team. All that and more here on today's edition of Locked On Syracuse. Now, before we get to everything, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Like I led off with at the top of the show, the more I think about Syracuse's loss to Tennessee, the more positives I actually take away from it. Now, I want to preface that by saying this, because maybe you're new here. And I am a Syracuse fan. I am a Syracuse alum. Of course, I'm always cheering for Syracuse football, and I always do want to be optimistic about the team. But I have no problem criticizing this team when I feel that it's warranted. But after thinking more and more about Syracuse's loss to Tennessee, the more positives I genuinely take away from it. So just know that this isn't me just trying to be optimistic, or the fact that it's only game one. If Syracuse lost 51-3, you would hear a lot about it here on this show. But regardless, let's get into some of the positive takeaways from this game against Tennessee. Big picture. The first one that I have, and it's very similar to 2024. This team has a lot of weapons. It's no secret, but it's worth repeating, that Syracuse football last year lost a ton of talent on offense. Jackson Meeks, leading wide receiver, gone. Trevor Pena transfers to Penn State. Oronde Gadsden gone in the NFL. LaQuint Allen gone. He's in the NFL at running back. But as we discussed throughout the offseason, Syracuse football, at least on paper, seemed to do a nice job in replacing those players, or at really what you could say is about as good of a job as you can hope for. Obviously, it's very difficult to go out and replace NFL caliber talent, but Syracuse football throughout the offseason, it seemed like they were on the right track to replacing those guys. And after one game against Tennessee, with how good that Tennessee defense is and how well this offense performed, I think it's fair to say that once again, Syracuse on offense is going to be elite, and in large part because they have a lot of weapons on this team. Let's start off by talking about Johntay Cook. He was brought in from Texas and also from Washington as well. He was a question mark heading into this season. Obviously, we had high expectations, given that he was a 2023 five-star recruit, hadn't yet put it all together. Well, in game one, we certainly saw his ability. He looks like he could be the number one wide receiver on Syracuse football in the slot. He's got a ton of speed, ton of agility. And against Tennessee, he led Syracuse with 6 catches for 58 yards. And he also led the team with 10 targets. He had that touchdown in the second quarter off a pick play, which may or may not have been pass interference. But you know what? The ref didn't call it, so it's not my problem. And it made it 24-14 in the second quarter. It's only one game, but Johntay Cook certainly cooked in this one. No pun intended, I guess. I just totally botched that, but that's okay. Johntay Cook was a very good performer for Syracuse on Saturday, and I'm excited to see what he's got in store for Syracuse moving forward. Yasin Willis. We began yesterday's show, the Fan Reaction Podcast, talking about how Yasin Willis is a complete stud for Syracuse football. The Orange really went from Sean Tucker, who's in the National Football League, to LaQuint Allen, who's in the National Football League, to now Yasin Willis, who now, if you're really looking big picture, overall, long-term, seems like he could be another player, another running back for Syracuse that goes to the National Football League. 23 carries for 91 yards and 3 touchdowns against Tennessee. And I know 4 yards a carry, it's not terrible, but it doesn't exactly wow you. He worked for every bit of those 91 yards. I'm very curious what his rushing yards above expected was. He looked great. He's already a big running back that's very difficult to tackle. Nobody wants to tackle Yasin Willis, especially in the open field, because he's also got a lot of speed given his size. I think he's over 230 pounds. But what impressed me the most, and something that I thought he already has improved upon from last season to this season when he was a true freshman, now true sophomore, his agility and change of direction. How many times throughout the game against Tennessee did we see Yasin Willis utilize that jump cut and end up falling forward for another couple of yards? That's what I'm talking about, those rushing yards above expected. It looked like at times Yasin Willis would get the ball and he's maybe got a yard or two of daylight before he's going to get brought down, but he utilizes a jump cut and he fights for extra yards. That 2-yard carry becomes a 5-yard carry. Instead of 1st and 10 or instead of 2nd and 8, you have 2nd and 5. And it's a big difference right there. Fran Brown, he called Yasin Willis the best player on offense in his postgame. He certainly has a point. And also, do not forget about his running mate alongside him in Will Nixon, the backup running back per se. 9 carries for 33 yards. He also had 2 catches for 29 yards. Good to see him back on the field. He is healthy following the Liz Frank injury he suffered last season. So overall, this running back room led by Yasin Willis seems strong. And then the other guys that chipped in. Dan Villari, 5 catches for 55 yards. He was targeted 8 times. He certainly seemed like a starting caliber tight end in the ACC. I don't know if he's going to be an all-conference performer this year, but he looked really solid against Tennessee. His one down moment was on the first 2-point conversion. Ball just goes right through his hands. It is what it is. It happens. They were not perfect on offense, but Dan Villari, for the most part, had a very nice day for Syracuse. Justice Ross Simmons, again, another guy who wasn't perfect. At times, I thought he could have created a little bit more separation. Caught only 3 of his 8 targets, but he did get 50 yards. So that's nice. Tyshawn Russell, the transfer from South Carolina, Fran Brown said, don't sleep on Tyshawn Russell. He was doing well in the offseason for Syracuse. He had 3 catches for 40 yards. Syracuse overall has a lot of depth because there's a couple more players that I haven't even mentioned just yet. Darryl Gill. Myself and many of you had high expectations for Darryl Gill this season after really having a strong end of last year. He's entering his 3rd year of college football. All the ingredients seem to be there for Darryl Gill to take a big step forward this season in development. And I'm not going to sit here and say that that can't happen anymore. But he was definitely disappointing on Saturday. Only targeted 4 times. He caught 2 passes for 33 yards. I think Syracuse needs more from Darryl Gill this season as a starting wide receiver. And then Jamie Tremble, the 2024 4-star tight end. Yes, I know he was dinged up heading into this game, but 1 catch for 1 yard. I would like to see more from Jamie Tremble going forward. But overall, 8 different players caught at least 1 pass for Syracuse football. That's a good sign for this offense against a defense that should remain as one of the better units in all of college football. So one of the big overall takeaways from Syracuse's loss to Tennessee is that on offense, they have a lot of weapons. They put up 4 touchdowns and nearly 400 total yards, and they were not perfect by any means. I think that is actually a positive moving forward because when they get those little issues corrected, all of a sudden, they're going to be putting up even more than just 26 points. And hopefully that starts this Saturday when they take on the UConn Huskies. Comment your thoughts in the comment section below, your big picture takeaways for Syracuse football following the loss to Tennessee, and whether or not you agree or disagree with me about this team having a lot of weapons. Now, coming up, we'll talk about the performances of Steve Angeli, the offensive line, and the special teams. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real here for just a moment. Actually getting the tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices just magically jumping at checkout, right? You're buying a ticket for $25. All of a sudden, it doubles at checkout for some reason. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. And honestly, Game Time, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets before. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. This is Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. Let's get back into the big picture takeaways following Syracuse's 45-26 loss to the Tennessee Volunteers on Saturday afternoon in Atlanta, Georgia. And let's get into Steve Angeli, this offensive line, and the special teams from this game. Let's start with the QB play here. What'd you think of it? Comment in the comment section below. I thought Steve Angeli was fine in this game. I think we were all really blessed with Kyle McCord last season, setting all of those ACC records and all that. It was a really fun year with Kyle McCord, and that was elite quarterback play. But Steve Angeli, maybe he's not Kyle McCord, but you know what? I think he's going to have a pretty good year for Syracuse football. I go back to the comment that I think Gavin made on this show last week about how Steve Angeli could be 75% of Kyle McCord. I definitely think that's on the table, which, by the way, 75% of Kyle McCord this year for Steve Angeli would be about 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. That's a really strong year for pretty much any quarterback in all of college football. And I think after this performance for Steve Angeli, that is definitely on the table for him to have a really productive season for Syracuse. 23 of 40, which is not great. Less than 60% completion, but keep in mind, you're playing against Tennessee. 274 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Was he perfect? No. Was he a big reason why Syracuse lost this game? No. I thought he was fine for Syracuse in this one. His mistakes are easily correctable. The fumble that he had in the first quarter, which led to the scoop and score, was part on the offensive line for not really giving him any time, and part on Steve Angeli. He's just got to have 2 hands on the football when he's in the pocket. I think you can fix that. I can let go of that mistake as long as it really just doesn't happen again. You can correct that issue. Just hold the ball with 2 hands in the pocket. That's all. Okay, we can fix that. The interception by Steve Angeli was not his fault. Credit to Jalen McMurray for making an outstanding play, leaping up and batting the ball, and the Tennessee linebacker coming right in and scooping up that interception. I don't know what you want Steve Angeli to do there. He's throwing to an open Dan Villari on that play in the right flat. Credit Tennessee. They're an elite defense for a reason. Yes, there was times where Steve Angeli did try to force a couple of balls. There was that one really bad throw he had to Steve Angeli. Steve Angeli is the quarterback. That one really bad throw he had to Johntay Cook. He was open on the outside on the right, and he just short hopped him. It was just a noodle arm throw. It happens, I guess, once a game, but that was really it. Overall, Steve Angeli was pretty solid in this one. We've talked about some of the positive plays already on the show. That 4th and 10 play to Johntay Cook was very huge in the first half, getting Syracuse on the board in that one. And I also thought Steve Angeli did a nice job of getting rid of the ball quickly. According to Pro Football Focus, Steve Angeli, on average, got rid of the ball within 2.5 seconds. That's what I like to call helping the offensive line help you. I didn't notice very often Steve Angeli holding on to the football too much. And you know what? The stats actually back it up. So continue doing that, Steve Angeli should have a very fine year for Syracuse football. And keep in mind, just long term in the back of your mind, he's got another year of eligibility. So it's not just about 2025 when we're evaluating Steve Angeli. It's also for 2026 because he does have that other year of eligibility left. Unlike Kyle McCord, when we all pretty much knew it was a one and done type deal. We were hoping he would get that 5th year of eligibility. We'll never know if he would have gotten it or not. But Steve Angeli definitely has another year. That's for sure. So just keep that in the back of your mind about Angeli. I was impressed with his performance against Tennessee. Offensive line. I talked about how yesterday it was a little bit up and down for Syracuse. But as Fran Brown noted in his postgame, a lot of the downs were not necessarily Syracuse got beat. Did it happen at times? Yeah. I mean, that's going to happen to any offensive line against this Tennessee front. It is. And it's going to be tough against Clemson. It's going to be tough against Notre Dame. It's going to be tough against a team like Miami as well for this offensive line. But Fran Brown mentioned how a lot of sacks by Tennessee were schemed up. There were a lot of times during this game, we talked about the example in the first quarter with Arian Carter, where there were free rushers on Steve Angeli. Free rusher does not come down to your ability as someone who can pass protect or not, or someone who can run block or not. It comes down to communication. And this offensive line heading into this game had never played a single game altogether. They never did. And so I'm willing to give them a pass on some of those mistakes because it's only one game. And we kind of figured that something like that would happen. That at times there would be free rushers because this team is brand new, especially on that offensive line, and they need more time to gel in front of Steve Angeli. But as far as how they actually handled the Tennessee defensive line when they actually were, blocking them, or at least attempting to block them, they did a really good job. Demetrius Witherspoon and Trevion Mack, the tackles, graded out really positively on Pro Football Focus. And nobody along the offensive line was below average. Everyone was average to above average on the offensive line, according to Pro Football Focus. So Steve Angeli was pretty good. The offensive line, aside from a few instances where there was a free rusher involved, was pretty good. And then we can get into the special teams. No mistakes on special teams. Special teams was a big problem in 2024. It was not an issue against Tennessee. The one thing, though, that we did not get to see, and I guess it's kind of a good thing because Syracuse, to their credit, when they got into scoring opportunities, they scored touchdowns unless it was the very end of the game when the game was already over. But for the most part, they got into the red zone. They were 4 for 5, 4 touchdowns, and 1 turnover on downs at the end of the game. So they did not have a single field goal attempt. Now, it's inevitable that will happen. And it's also inevitable that they will try a field goal from a pretty far distance, at least 45 yards or more. We did see on the depth chart that Iowa transfer Trip Woody did win the job over Jaden O. But we did not get to see Trip Woody actually attempt a field goal. That's something that I'll definitely have my eye on for Saturday against UConn. But you know what? If Syracuse's offense wants to continue scoring touchdowns, that's fine with me too. I am not going to sit here and complain about the lack of field goal attempts. Okay? Just want to put that on the record so that when Syracuse plays UConn on Saturday, we're not talking about how Trip Woody attempted 5 field goals because this team couldn't score in the red zone. All right? Punter Jack Stonehouse, he's excellent. Like he's just phenomenal as a punter. He's going to be in the National Football League. And even Steve Angeli had a really well-executed pooch punt in this one. I believe it was in the first half. So overall, big picture takeaways here. It's mostly positive. There's a lot of weapons on offense. Yes, there's a couple of players we'd like to see more of, but they have a lot of depth. They can still function on offense even when Darryl Gill is not on his game or Jamie Tremble maybe has not yet taken that step forward in development just yet. They're not perfect, but they're still a very, very good offense. The offensive line was fine. Steve Angeli was fine. The special teams, no problems with it whatsoever against Tennessee. That was big. It's just the defense. The defense has got to be better. It's as simple as that with this team moving forward. Coming up, I still believe that Syracuse football is not only a bowl team, but they should definitely still have bowl expectations. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average, in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. Thank you all so much for making it to this point of the podcast. I hope that means you enjoy Locked On Syracuse. And don't worry, we still got plenty of more to talk about here on this show. Why I still believe that Syracuse football is not only a bowl team this year, but should still have bowl expectations for this season. But before we get into it, again, thank you so much for making it to this point of the podcast. If you can just do me this quick favor here, it's completely free, allows the channel to show up directly on your feed. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, helps the channel grow to reach all Syracuse Orange fans. Let's step back into the big picture takeaways following the Orange's loss to Tennessee on Saturday, which was a 45-26 result. Ladies and gentlemen, do you still believe that Syracuse football is a bowl team? Comment your thoughts right now in the comments section below. Because I do. I 100% firmly believe that Syracuse football not only is a bowl team for 2025, but should definitely have those expectations following their performance against Tennessee. Because overall, it wasn't a bad performance. You have to give credit to Tennessee. There's a reason why Tennessee is Tennessee with their head coach and Josh Heupel. They're probably going to be really good once again this year. Syracuse football, they got off to a poor start. The defense was not good by any means. But as we've talked about throughout the show, most of the team was pretty good in this game. Most of it was pretty good. And for what it's worth, I still think 7 wins, which was my prediction. So beyond just the 6-6, which is what you need to make a bowl, I still definitely think 7-5 is on the table. And to a lesser extent, 8-4 is also on the table as well for Syracuse, although they're going to have to steal a couple of more games than they would in order to reach 8-4. But it's not impossible given the performance we saw by Syracuse on Saturday. And we'll also get into UConn, which is, or I guess into UConn prep starting tomorrow. That game is not a guaranteed Syracuse win, by the way. And that's a credit to the UConn program since Jim Mora took over for them in 2022. But also think about it this way. If you're Syracuse, you want to have bowl expectations, you want to be a bowl team, you better beat UConn at home on Saturday. And we'll talk more about it tomorrow on the show. But let's get into the rest of the ACC in relation to Syracuse. How many teams in the ACC do you think are actually better than the Orange? Like definitively, you know for a fact they are better than Syracuse. Because to me, it's not many. It's not many. I really feel that Syracuse could just beat Georgia Tech from a year ago. Georgia Tech last year was a very solid team. They went 7-5 in the regular season, but that record was a bit deceiving. They had a very, very difficult schedule, just like Syracuse this year. And as a result, they went 7-5. But that was probably the best that they could have hoped for that season because they were a good team, just a brutal schedule that they drew that year. Similar deal with Syracuse. Despite Notre Dame and Clemson losing this week, they're 0-1, same record as Syracuse. those are still going to be very difficult games for the Orange to win. Think about who those teams were playing. Notre Dame going on the road against Miami. Miami, a big winner of the weekend, by the way. And Clemson. I mean, look, I get it. It was a little bit of a dud that they had against LSU. It's also LSU. That's a preseason top 10 team in the country right there. They should have still won. They're at home. You're the top 5 team in the country. But hey, I'm not going to sit here and say, all of a sudden Clemson's super beatable now because they lost to LSU. Give some credit to LSU. They're a good team as well, just like Clemson. So Notre Dame and Clemson, that's going to be tough for Syracuse no matter what. And we've already talked about that plenty on this show. Those two teams, definitely better than Syracuse. Miami, as I just mentioned, big winner of the weekend, beating Notre Dame at home, emotional victory for them. They're going to be a formidable opponent when Syracuse travels down south in November to take on Miami. Florida State, another big winner of the weekend. You want to sit here and say that Florida State is definitely better than Syracuse? You know what? You're probably right about that. Thomas Castellanos, he definitely shut me up and a lot of people up with his performance against Alabama. But you know what? Syracuse is not playing Florida State this year. So who cares how good Florida State is? The Orange are not playing Florida State in 2025. So they can be a big winner all they want. It does not matter for us Syracuse fans. SMU and Pitt, I mean, they played nobody. So my opinion on those teams hasn't changed. Georgia Tech, they won at Colorado. Georgia Tech, here's the deal. They seem like a little bit lesser version of Tennessee. They can run the ball just as well, if not better, than Tennessee, which is a definite concern with the matchup against Syracuse later this year. But when you look at the rest of their team, I don't know if it's as good as Tennessee on Saturday. So as long as Syracuse can do similar to what they do last year, which is get ahead of Georgia Tech and try to stop them from being able to run the ball as much as they would want, they can definitely go in there and win that game. UNC I'm very curious about. Syracuse is playing them as well this season. They still have not kicked off the season yet. It's very, very weird. They start actually tonight, which is Monday, against TCU at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm very curious to see what we see from North Carolina this evening. But overall, I look at the rest of the ACC and I look at how Syracuse played this weekend against Tennessee. And I sit here and I say to myself, why can't Syracuse at least be decent this year? Okay, 9-3, matching what they did a year ago. I understand. I'm a reasonable guy. I understand that you might not be as good record-wise as last year. I get it. But bowl expectations, 100%. This team is definitely good enough to make a bowl. Comment your thoughts right now in the comments section below. Agree with me? Disagree with me? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Now, as far as what's coming up on Locked On Syracuse here in the near future, tomorrow we'll begin discussing the UConn game, which is this Saturday at noon Eastern, the home opener for Syracuse football. Also later on the week, would like to do a UConn crossover episode as well. So all that and more coming up on Locked On Syracuse here in the near future. It's another big moment here on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly show. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation along two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season only on Fire TV. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. And if you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. And if you can just do me this quick favor here, tell one or two of your closest Syracuse friends about the Locked On Syracuse podcast so this channel can grow and reach all Syracuse Orange fans. And also want to shout out all of you guys. The support over the last few weeks and really throughout the offseason was tremendous. And there's plenty of more content coming your way here on Locked On Syracuse. So folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening, and I will see you all again soon.